Serenity now, Higher Side Chatters, doing what we do from the Sunshine State. I'm Greg Carlwood, and we know that blackmail, material, dirt, and compromat are major factors in how power really works in the big machine, and some very dark things are done to cultivate that material, from various forms of well-crafted compromising scenarios and engineered entrapment, often involving planting assets in one's life, honeypot operations, and as we've seen several times before, from the Franklin scandal to Diddy and Epstein, sex parties and prostitution in houses rigged to the brim with surveillance equipment. And in recent years, we've learned enough to know that the rot runs deep and there's plenty of dark secrets to keep in a given file. Well, antivirus and cybersecurity pioneer John McAfee had the expertise and opportunity to acquire such information and claimed on much more than one occasion to have acquired a good sum of it on a wide range of powerful people through spyware. So when he dies of an alleged suicide in a Spanish prison after repeated claims he would never kill himself and not to trust reports that say he did, even going so far as to launch a token called WHACKD and get it tattooed on his arm, I think it's right to be a bit skeptical and worth looking into a bit further. And here in the studio with me to talk about all things John McAfee and the sketchy details of the official story is the wife he left behind, Janice McAfee. After 10 years as a prostitute in Miami, he became her John with a capital J, and it turned into love and marriage, and they were together for 8 years before his aforementioned death on June 23, 2021. She now tries to keep his legacy alive and keep the pressure on when it comes to what increasingly seems like a cover-up. So let's get into it with the infamous Mrs. McAfee, tamer of a true wild man. Janice, thanks for being here.
Thank you for that awesome introduction. my John with a capital J.
I thought that was clever.
That was very clever. Thank you for that.
Oh, man. So I'm really happy that this worked out, that we could do this in person.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all know it's very hard to lose the ones we love, especially with so many unanswered questions. And I hoped for this we could kind of work backwards and build up to some of the big mysteries that I see so many posts about when you go down the John McAfee rabbit holes.
Yeah.
So let's start with his death in a Barcelona prison in June of 2021. He was arrested 8 months earlier on U.S. federal charges of tax evasion, failure to file tax returns, and promoting cryptocurrencies for personal gain without reporting the income. He was set to be extradited back to the States, and the official story is that he committed suicide in his cell by hanging via shoelaces before that could happen. Now, let's start out with why people should doubt that official story. What are the big red flags that something is off?
The first thing I think was that the prison opened up an investigation into his death. I don't think, as I was told, that's not usually the standard procedure, right? You die. That's it. And that's all that there is to it. And also that was suspicious because it was actually the prison, it had to have been the prison that leaked the information of him being dead in the first place, right? And so that is also how I found out myself how John was dead. I didn't find out from the prison. They didn't call myself or either of his attorneys to let him know that he was dead. Also, when I went to the prison to collect his belongings, I was able to speak with the head of the guards, the prison guards. He's kind of like the boss of them, I guess, or supervisor, I don't know, exact title. And he was very troubled by John's death. It was a surprise and a shock to him, a surprise and a shock to everyone in the prison that John was dead, because there was no sign of this being on his mind, right? There was no change in his persona as they knew him. They knew John to be like a very engaging guy, fun, laughing, cracking jokes, very, always, not kind of secluded or anything like that, right? He was the same self, even after he had come back from court receiving this news that there was going to be an extradition, which, by the way, was not going to happen within the next day, week, month, or year, right? It was going to take time.
Which is addressing one of the big things you'll see in the comment sections, which is people saying, well, he knew he was in a lot of trouble. He's facing 30 years, so he just offed himself. And it's like...
Yeah, he rage quit. I heard that a lot.
Rage quit is a great term for it. But I definitely don't think that adds up because there could be appeals. He's been in trouble before.
Yes.
He's not a stranger to it. I think he kind of liked the drama. And so... I definitely don't think that it makes any logical sense if you know the man that he would do such a thing. But his last words to you was, I don't know if it was that day, but it was.
I spoke to him that day.
Okay.
Twice that day.
And he said,
his last words to me was that I love you and I'll call you later. So we spoke every day once he was processed and he had gone through whatever processes to get into the prison, getting logged in or whatever. And so after that, we began speaking every day, 3 times a day for 8 minutes. The calls were only 8 minutes long. And so we would speak in the morning, afternoon, and then in the evening. And so I spoke to him before he went to court. I spoke to him after he went to court. Neither time would I say that his mood had shifted or that he didn't sound like himself or that there was some sort of warning, in either of those conversations. He was definitely disappointed with the decision, but it wasn't a surprise. We knew that they were going to grant the extradition. It was obvious, but John had a team of attorneys that was working on his case. We had 2 U.S. attorneys because there were 2 cases, one in Tennessee related to the taxes, and then one that the SEC brought later after he was in custody for various activities related to the crypto projects he was involved in. Then we had 2 Spanish attorneys. The initial attorney was not very well versed in extradition, and then we later hired someone who was an expert in extraditions and going up against the U.S. We also had a UK attorney because John had dual citizenship. So we were working all angles, and we all understood that they were going to grant the extradition, and we were already prepared for next steps.
Yeah. Well, I think that adds some context to those comments that you'll often see. So when you heard he died, my understanding is you were brought in to identify the body, and you were only shown him from the neck up.
Yeah.
Was anything suspicious about that? I mean, you didn't get to see the tattoos. Usually they say that's a good way you identify someone.
Which is what I wanted to see, which is why I fought so hard to get his body, to be able to see that.
Another factor, they still are possessing his body.
No. I was able to take possession December 14th of 2023, and they wouldn't allow me to see him then either. I think that probably was really against their procedures, but I did ask, and initially the woman there, she was like, I think that's something we could do because John wanted to be cremated. And so I wanted to just ask, can I see him before you do this? And the woman initially agreed, but then she called someone in. Some guy came in, like an hour later, and he was completely blocked it. And so they wouldn't allow me to see him. I had an opportunity. I just didn't have the funds before then, as they were, because obviously he would have needed to be thawed out, so before they could cremate him. So had I had 20,000 euros, I could have paid for a pathologist to come down from Madrid to Barcelona and do an autopsy on him, but I just didn't have the money. Within that sort of 2-day time that it was going to take for him to be prepared for the cremation.
Right on. So when you got him in 2023 in December, 2 years after passing, was he cremated?
Yeah.
When you got possession of him?
Yeah.
Obviously, that's an important detail because the internet has a lot of speculations.
Yeah.
And
granted, rightfully so, right? Because again, it's not as though I was able to look in the box and see who's in the box. So maybe I'm adding to the conspiracy theories here now. But and I understand it because we're talking about John McAfee. He faked a heart attack. He faked a stroke. He's spoken about having doubles. But I will say, just to address this really quickly, anytime that he shared anything online about one of his doubles was not a double, it was actually him. Right. So because I took the pictures so that's not to say that he didn't have doubles. But I'm just saying, during the course of our relationship, what he reported to be doubles was not actually.
Sure. He liked to mess with people.
Yes.
I get that. That's obviously why there's so much speculation, and it's hard to know what to believe. But the doubles thing is interesting. I actually had a picture of one of the times where he did this, and
let's see it.
Well, maybe Travis can pull it up here, but that's my printout. But he said that one of the guys you can tell by the lips there's a difference. And then he said one of the guys has arthritis in his hand, and then this guy below it kind of does look. But that was all. Did you take these pictures?
No, he took them, and they're all him.
Okay. He's a jokester. Yeah, there we go.
Very clever. Yeah.
Because that one on the bottom does kind of look like an arthritis
Yeah, it
thing.
does. But see, if you can see, so that was where we were staying in Spain.
Okay.
That background. So that's in the living room where we were staying in Spain.
Did you ever see a double?
No, I never saw a double.
Okay. He says he keeps them close, so I wasn't sure.
I never saw a double. I never had sex with a double. I think I saw somebody
Hey,
comment
now.
that. Like, how would I know that it's not the real John McAfee? I knew. Okay, so there was, yeah.
There are signs.
Yes.
The police opened up this investigation, and I know that you've said you got to see footage of the actual event.
Yeah.
And talk to us about that, because one of the speculations is that this was faked somehow, and I want to ask you about some things, but this is going to be important. So tell us what you saw on the police footage you were allowed to see, and is there any possibility that you were fooled by your expectations and it kind of being a match? But talk to us about what you saw.
Oh, what do you mean fooled? In what sense?
Well, you expect to see something that you can take at face value.
Oh, right.
And then in retrospect, you might be like, is it possible that he could still be alive given what I've seen?
Okay. So these are questions that I've tortured myself about.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So, and I understand why people have the questions. I have them and had them as well. So in the footage, you see the hallway is completely empty. So it's a hallway, and you have the cells on either side of the hallway. John's cell was closest to the camera. You see that his door is slightly ajar. This open just a little bit.
That's
And
unusual right off the bat.
I
isn't
think
it?
so, because all of the other doors were completely closed. The guard comes and he's walking down the hallway. He's looking into it's a little thin window that you can look into the cell. And so he's stopping at each cell and he's looking in. And so when he gets to John's, that opening, he sees him, and then all of a sudden he's waving and he's, trying to get people's attention. And so the door then slides open. He goes in, and you can't see inside the cell. You just see that the door is open, and you see that he goes in. So he goes in. I think he comes out, and then another guard comes down the hallway, and then there's two of them now in there. There's just a lot of commotion now that's happening. It's been a while since I've seen this, so I'm trying to give you all the details. And so just to skip past all of that, they then bring John out into the hallway right in front of his cell door, and they lay him on the floor, and they're kind of just standing around because it's just the guards at this time that have him. And you see it's a four-person team, medical response team. They're coming down the hall, kind of not in a hurry about it, but they're coming down the hall. And they kind of all surround his upper body. So there's kind of two on either side up here, and then two on either side here. And there's one with, I don't know what this apparatus is called. They put the thing over the mouth, and then they're pumping the bag. I don't know what that apparatus is called. But anyways, they have that.
Sure.
Giving him oxygen, presumably. And they are doing chest compressions. And this goes on for over 10 minutes. Right. And then they finally call it or whatever. And they put him back in the cell. The door is closed, and that's that.
And that seems weird.
For me, the red flags came once I saw the footage, but then when I looked into the investigative report, once I got that, and I, obviously it's in Spanish, so it's translated for me. But what they said was, so it was reported that John was found dead, and that was not true. He was alive. He was breathing, and he had a pulse. His breathing was shallow. He had a faint pulse, but he was still alive, probably unconscious though. So the need for the the giving him oxygen or doing chest compressions, I'm not sure why that would have been needed, or if that was just standard procedure. So maybe not red flag, but just curious. Yes.
Well, he definitely wasn't found dead if they're going to go and do this. You know, they
Right.
would have checked a pulse and been like, there's nothing we can do.
Right.
But they
Exactly.
obviously were trying to get him back. And then,
Yeah. But this is what was initially reported. This is what was shared all over the world to the press, that he was dead. He was found dead.
so often the little details don't add up with the mainstream report that
Right.
everybody remembers.
Right.
And I've heard you say that you also noticed on the video that they didn't take the shoelaces off of his neck. Is that right?
I didn't notice that from the video. So you can't see that in the video because you can't really see John's face, but you can see what they're doing, but you can't really see him. But it was going through the police report, the investigative report. There were pictures included, and in the pictures, the shoestrings were still around his neck, and it was a lot of shoestrings. It's about this thick worth of shoestrings around his neck. So, and just to address this quickly, because I've seen people comment and say, oh, when you go to prison or when you go to jail, they take your shoestrings. Maybe in America. Maybe that's because that is standard procedure. They take your shoestrings and your belt. They'll take anything that you can use to harm yourself. But I don't know that was procedure in Spain, because John, we were able to send John. I was able to send John clothes. So I sent him shoes that had shoestrings in them. And if that was an issue, they would have, not allowed that. So whether that's a discrepancy or not, I'm not sure. Or whether they were lenient in that sense to allow him to have his shoestrings, I don't know. But I do know that I was able to send him shoes with shoestrings just to address that. So the pictures had, him with the noose around his neck. And also another curious thing was that John was, he was found hanging from the window, and there was something attached to the window, attached to him hanging from the window. Where that was attached at, I don't know. It doesn't really say. And that, whatever it was burned. So they used a lighter to burn it to get him down from the window. So we're talking about potential evidence being destroyed, yes.
Right.
Also, when I went to the prison to collect his belongings, this gentleman that I told you about, who was the head of the guards, he made it a point to let me know that his feet were on the floor when he was found. This was something that stood out to me because that is something that John talked about related to Jeffrey Epstein, and how could he have hung himself and his feet were on the floor? Not to mention, Jeffrey Epstein, his neck was broken in, a few places. And so it became essential for me to get the full autopsy. What happened was, during the investigation that lasted about 8 months, and they refused to release John's body in that 8 months because the investigation was open. And so when they attempted to close the investigation, I was wanting the autopsy, and my attorney advised me that if I didn't make an appeal for the autopsy now, I can't come back and do it later. I have to do it now, or not at all. And so that's what I did. And instead of them releasing his body, they kept his body the entire time while they decided on whether or not to release the full autopsy report.
Right. So on one level, I definitely think that the parallel with Epstein kind of holds water. You got two guys who are in prison in a controlled environment, and they apparently have blackmail files on very powerful people.
Yeah.
Then suddenly they both commit suicide in very similar ways and with similar details. And one guy specifically said, "I will never do this," and tattooed it on his arm. Yes, it is. It seems like the same old playbook, that they've done before. So to build the argument that powerful people would actually be motivated to kill him in prison, talk to us about the story of the raid in Belize, the gifted computers, and how John seemed to acquire some pretty dark, deep secrets, because it's a little different than the way Epstein did it.
Yeah. So John's living in Belize. I'm not sure exactly when he got there or how long he had been living in Belize before all of his troubles began. But while he was there, he opened up a coffee shop because he wanted good coffee. So he opened a coffee shop, and he needed he opened up a taxi ferry service over the water, boat service, because he couldn't get a ferry to come on time, when he needed to be wherever it was. So he opened up that business. I think there were several others, but he turned all of these over to the locals. Right. Also, he had built homes for a couple of his girlfriends that he had there. And one of them in particular, Amy, she was living in an area that was very dangerous. And so he donated equipment and money to the local police so that they could, do their job and she could be living somewhere that was relatively safe. So, John's there just being John, right? Spreading his wealth, whatever. And he gets a visit to his property from two representatives from the government asking if he would consider giving a $2 million donation for exchange for certain perks, money, women, land, whatever it is that his heart desired.
Mm-hmm.
And, he politely declined, I guess, politely. Anyways, he declined. And he said that a week later they came back, or not those representatives, but they sent the GSU, which is the Gang Suppression Unit, and they raided his property. They kept him and all persons on the property handcuffed, I guess on their knees in the sun for like over 12 hours. And they destroyed his lab. He was working on a topical antivirus, and the plant that he was using in the antivirus was local to that specific area in the jungle where he was. And so they destroyed that lab, and they shot one of his dogs, his deaf dog. And so they also arrested him, saying that he had an illegal firearm, but he later produced the license for it, and they dropped those charges and let him go. And so then he says a week after that was when those representatives came back and asked him if he changed his mind about his donation, and he said, "No, F you, get off my property."
Right.
So this for him began war. Now he's at war with these people, and what he wanted to find was just evidence that he was set up for that raid, and he wanted an apology from the prime minister. So what John decided to do was gift laptops to various girlfriends, boyfriends of people who were high up in the government. Now, he never really named those people or who exactly they were. He just said high level people within the government. And so on these laptops was key logging information and spyware.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder why people wouldn't question that. Oh, he's just giving out laptops. That's so nice, right? You're just going
Right.
to take that from, I guess, it must have been really nice laptops, I guess, maybe. But anyway, so they happily accepted these gifts. And I don't even know if he actually personally gave them. Like, how did that even work? He never told that part of the story. But anyways, so they have this information. And now John is collecting all of the goods, right? Because imagine if you were into some nefarious activity, you have no idea that anyone could possibly be watching you, right? Because you've made sure of that, right? You've bolstered your security, whatever, but you have this device now that's been inserted into your vicinity. And so, but you're not knowing this, so you're still conducting business as usual. So imagine the goods that he would have gotten on all of these people, unbeknownst to them. And so this went on for a few months, his collecting this data. And he said that he hired women to kind of parse through the information just to find things related to him. Because again, he was looking for evidence that he was set up for the raid on his property. Mm-hmm. And instead he found out about drug trafficking, human trafficking, murder for hire from the highest levels within the government. So this was obviously very alarming.
Yeah. So Travis, can you pull up the file JM had massive dirt on corruption? So the quote I got from him in an interview he gave is he said, "I didn't find evidence of the raid, but I found out the Minister of National Defense for Belize was the largest drug trafficker in Central America, and the Minister of Immigration was the biggest human trafficker." And he claimed that he had evidence of deep U.S. involvement in corruption through kind of intergovernmental communication that these computers were a part of. I mean, it seems like he also gave out some other computers. Who knows exactly who, as you say.
Right.
But I could understand that if there is a network of traffickers of all sorts of unsavory goods, that occasionally people within the U.S. government communicate with the people in the Belize government, and there you have it. So this is from one of the deep rabbit holes. You know, conspiracy people, they make these mosaics. They're not always exactly with full context, but this is apparently, the top is a quote from his blog, which is basically what you said. He says, I purchased 75 cheap laptop computers and with trusted help installed invisible keystroke logging software on all of them, the kind that calls home to me and disgorges the text files. I also, on command, could turn on and off the microphones and cameras and send these files on command. I had the computers repackaged as if new. I began giving them away as presents to select people, government employees, police officers, cabinet ministers, assistants, girlfriends of powerful men, boyfriends of powerful women. I hired 4 trusted people full-time to monitor the text files and provide myself with the subsequent passwords for everyone's email, Facebook, private message boards, and other passworded accounts. The keystroke monitoring continued after password collection in order to document text input that would later be deleted. So nothing was missed.
Nothing was missed.
Then this stuff below, the middle one talks about the fact that ricin is made from castor plants, and maybe there was some speculation in the lab that like poisons could be made there from common plants in the area.
Yeah.
And then the bottom left is someone claiming that his blog in 2020 completely changed. There was a 6-year gap between posts, and anything before that, it has his flavor to it. Yeah. And then after, it seems like it's mostly negative about him.
Because the person that was running it, they had a falling out.
Okay, so you're aware of that. So you can kind of confirm that. And then the bottom right, he talks about the network of spies.
Yeah.
Says,
and I see here you have something in this anonymous square here where they're talking about the Hezbollah providing guns. Also, John had talked about how there was passport selling as well too. I don't want to get too deep into that, but this was also very alarming for him, something that was very dangerous. He only mentioned it maybe once or twice about finding out that information, but it was just curious to know that apparently they were being sold Belizean passports, Hezbollah, and then that's how they were getting, they'd get to the Belize and then make their way into the States.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Basically, that's, exactly how the traffickers were getting into the States, and a big fake passport operation. Can you pull up JM Spies? I asked you about this before we started recording because I did not expect this to be you, but that's you?
Yes, that's me.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Nikki.
Yeah, Nikki adding keystroke logging software to gift computers. This part 2 post will itself have to be divided into 2 parts. It turned out much bigger than I thought. I believe these are his words. The photo above is one of the American women working both in Miami and in Belize. Frequent government ministers and officials flew to Miami 2 hours from Belize City for business, pleasure, parties, or what have you. I needed resources in Miami to keep tabs on targets. Nikki is preparing a few computers for delivery to friends of hers in Belize. She told all of her targets that she had a friend in the computer sales business, and that friend could provide computers for $100 each. Even government officials like a good deal, so the computers were easy to place. So the reason why I didn't think, it does kind of look like you, but I didn't think it was you because I didn't think the timeline was a very good fit. Because you guys met in 2013. 2012.
December 2012.
And I thought the seeding of computers was way before that.
It was, and there definitely was a Nikki. I was not the Nikki, but obviously he needed someone to post for the...
Oh, okay. I gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
The difficult thing to bring up to someone who lost a person in this fashion is the claims online that he's still alive. Yes. And it's not just online, because you know about the Riding with the Devil Netflix documentary. And just let me read this from AARP, of all places, who wrote an article about John and included this. He could still be alive. When McAfee was deported from Guatemala to the U.S. in 2013, he left his girlfriend Samantha Herrera back in Belize. He landed in Miami and the very next day hired a prostitute, Janice Dyson, whom he would later marry. Dyson was still his wife at the time of his death, but it's Herrera that we see at the end of the film telling director Charlie Russell that she got a mysterious call several weeks after his death. She said it was John, and he told her he paid people off to fake his death and is now living in Texas. Is it true? Herrera comes off as more convincing than you might think, and Russell says he doesn't know. So I have heard you say that you doubt this, and I agree Texas would be a weird place for him to hide out. But have you ever talked to her about this phone call or gotten any more details about it? Because I would definitely probably want to contact that person and be like, what are you talking about?
No, I never reached out to her about it. Because it's just for me, it reads as BS. There's nothing, she doesn't come off as believable at all. But if you don't know her, then you would maybe assume that she did. I mean, just the way that it was inserted in there, and the things that she had to say about John were not necessarily favorable. But why would he all of a sudden want to call you and have you? But she not only said that he, had, people help him fake his death. She also said that he said he wanted her to come and meet him somewhere and come and be run away together. Okay.
And you had been together for 8 years.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this as a jealous woman or anything, because John had women. That was just what John did. And I didn't demand exclusivity from him, so it just is what it is. But during the course of our being together, whenever Samantha would call, he would actually have me answer the phone, right? Because she would be calling and asking for money. She'd have some sob story about what's going on and why she needs him to send money. Now, I will say, when John left Guatemala and came back to America, he spent like the first 6 months trying desperately to get both Samantha and Amy to the States, because that's what he promised them, that he would do that for them. And he went to attorneys to help with that. But because of all of the heat that he was under, it just wasn't able to happen. I will also say that both Amy and Samantha were the girlfriends that I mentioned who had homes built for them. John built them homes. They were their homes. They had the deed. They had, if they wanted to sell the homes, they could. Now, Amy kept her home, at least from what I understood. Before John died, she kept her home. She was doing very well. He had put her through school, so she was able to graduate from high school, got her a tutor. She's, taught her English. And at the time, which was about 2014, 2015, she was working for one of the wealthiest men on the island. So she had really turned her life around from, her meeting John, no longer working as a prostitute. But Samantha was not the same, she wasn't able to turn her life around in that same sense. And she actually sold her home for much less than what it was worth. And so now this is why she was calling John and asking him, for money. So this is what I have to say about that. Now, that's not to say she didn't get a phone call. I don't know, but I highly doubt it. I very highly doubt it.
That is one of the big reasons why people think he might still be alive. And there are others. There was a post on a YouTube channel from January of this year. Have you seen this?
No.
Have you heard about this? So it looks like him in his normal setup. When he would record things, it looked a little bit like our wall here. Black, soundproofing, and he'd wear his sunglasses. Well, there was a post on a kind of random YouTube channel that doesn't really have anything else to do with him, and it's just a short 10-second clip if he says, "I know what you did, and I won't forget," or something. Yeah. And I could imagine nobody knows when something was recorded. You only know when something's posted.
Right.
So maybe it was an old clip.
I think if and he's wearing like this ring, a silver ring in it.
Maybe.
Do you have a clip of it?
I don't think I have that.
Okay, that's
I got a lot of stuff, but not that.
Okay, no problem.
I do have.
I can say this: any of the videos that you have seen posted of John since his death are not new. None of them are new. They're all pre-recorded.
So then, this is the only other element of the case that he could still be alive. There was a Bitcoin magazine article from April of 2024. It says, mysterious and one thought dead antivirus mogul John McAfee has been reported by multiple sources to have been seen walking the streets of El Salvador. One reporter was able to briefly speak with him before being rushed away by security. The reporter said, "Mr. McAfee, we thought you killed yourself in prison. Why are you alive in El Salvador?" McAfee says, "I didn't kill myself like Epstein didn't kill himself. I'm in El Salvador for the Happening party." At this point, security shut down the conversation and whisked him away to a private location away from reporters. The government of El Salvador has yet to respond to the news of a once thought dead fugitive roaming the streets of their country. Many are speculating that John McAfee could be joining Max Kaiser as an advisor for the country. Bukele has been reportedly very worried about malware attacking the country's critical infrastructure, and McAfee's expertise in antivirus could be very useful for national security reasons. Of course, people know El Salvador is the Bitcoin country, so he could have an interest, but I thought this was a pretty interesting.
That's very interesting.
Post.
The first me hearing of it.
Okay, I'm bringing something new
yes,
to the table.
you are
All
bringing
right.
something. And I will say, I would love for John to have made it out of there. I would love for Spain to not have been his end. Not in that way, because he deserved better.
Of course. I don't want to give you false hope, but I'm just saying, look, these are the things that are speculated about. The parallels with Epstein, too, that's another thing. A lot of people think that he got out, that he was too valuable, and that he's probably doing what he was always doing, just under some pseudonym now. And that brings up another thing I was going to get to eventually, but there is drone footage of Epstein. Apparently, it looks like him. You know, he's looking up at a drone, and it's on the island after he was supposedly dead.
But you just said, we don't know when these things were recorded, yeah? So,
exactly. Well, in that case, we kind of have an idea, because there's the Rusty Shackleford stuff. Now, I know just by your reaction.
Yeah.
So Rusty Shackleford made this an account under this pseudonym and took a drone to Epstein's Island and got some of the best footage anywhere. He filmed the FBI snooping around inside. He filmed into the window of that temple where there was a mattress in an empty room with some scaffolding. And people think that this was John because he was tweeting about having a drone like this during the same time period, and he was out traveling on the yacht at this time. Does any of this make sense to you? Were you anywhere near Little St. James with him around November of 2019?
No, not November of 2019. We were in the Caribbean, though, in the Bahamas. In
that's
2019.
close.
Yeah, we left America in January of 2019. And
see, this is one of his tweets. Not to interrupt you, but this it's actually a video. I just got a screenshot of it, but that's his account, November 2019. Talking about a new drone. If the person who flew the drones over Epstein's Island had this baby at the time, we would have been able to read the fine print on the papers that the FBI was packing up.
Yeah.
That could be a little bit of a coded message. And John's not, he's smart enough to leave a little code like that. And my understanding is the actual videos were posted right around this time. What else do we have labeled Shackleford? So yeah, this is just a 4chan post of a guy who's trying to figure out or making the case that they are the same person. There's a timeline where McAfee goes dark, and then 5 days after, Rusty Shackleford starts posting his drone videos. And then this guy says, "I have a light bulb moment, and I realize McAfee is on a boat in the Caribbean and probably has a drone and definitely has the time to do this since he's on the lam." Then, of course, here's a tweet from McAfee in April showing off his wife's new drone.
Yeah.
And then this guy says Twitter suspended his account right after he connected these dots. And it just strongly implies that his dead man switch and possible arrest are Epstein related. Your thoughts on this?
So yes, we were in the Caribbean.
I mean, that's
from January until mid-July of 2019. So we were in the Bahamas, in Cuba, and back to the Bahamas, and back to Cuba, and then finally the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, I think actually on one of those screenshots it says it was tweeted from Cuba.
Yeah, and I do believe Rusty Shackleford is related to John.
Do you?
In some way, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We've cracked the case. I could see his curiosity, especially being.
But I'm not confirming nor denying whether this is true. I'm just saying I do believe that Rusty is related to John in some way. Yes.
Fair enough. Yes. It seems like a lot of things kind of sync up. So Let me also ask you, let's back up to the whacked stuff. I told you I was going to bring this up, but I'm basically a placeholder for all of the 4chan techno-libertarian bros questions they would want to ask you if they could. And if we have the picture of the tattoo, I don't know, but he tweeted the tattoo and said at that time, like, I wrote it on my arm, this is not going to happen. He said, I'm getting subtle messages from the U.S. officials saying, in effect, we're coming for you, McAfee. We're going to kill yourself. I got a tattoo today just in case. If I suicide myself, I didn't. Check my right arm. This right away makes the theme of the token seem very important. He tattooed it on him. So clearly there was something there. Mm-hmm. And he claimed to have a 31 terabyte dead man switch that would trigger in a very complex setup if his life were to end. And I know you've said you don't know anything about it, but I have to ask because I've been down some threads that go very deep on this. Have you learned anything more about the potential of a dead man switch or anything connected even to the whacked token?
What I will say about the whacked token is that, and the dead man switch, is that it would be an extremely clever way to disguise said dead man switch.
It would.
I do believe that John had a dead man switch. I do not believe that it would have been left in one person's control to release it, because that's just not John's style. He wouldn't have done that. I just couldn't see that happening. But embedding it somehow in the blockchain would definitely be something very clever that John would I would imagine. And if that has something to do with the WAC token, I don't know. I know that it was important to him. It could have been, just a way to, I don't know. I just don't want to say too much, but I do think it's very clever. It would be a clever way to disguise the dead man switch. However, there was something that happened. Something went awry, right? Because I don't believe that John is still with us. Mm-hmm. I fully believe that he would have found a way to reach out, whether it was reach out specifically to me or reach out to the world in some way. We would have seen something by now. It's been 4 years.
Yes.
And we would have heard something concrete, not, oh, maybe this, maybe that, and we're trying to, do all of this crazy math to figure out. If it wouldn't have been anything like that, because his hubris would not have allowed him to stay quiet for this long. Yeah,
I do agree with that. Although his 80th birthday would be September, right?
Yes.
So let's keep an eye out there. I did want to ask you about this. So this is something people speculate. That picture of you on the bottom right, that's a very common picture that's like, if you Google your name, it's everywhere. Yeah. You're wearing the same ring as John's wearing. It's his ring.
It's his ring.
In that picture. Yeah. You have it right there, right?
Yeah.
Let me see that. I just wanted to look at it.
Do you want
to? Can I just touch it?
Yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh. All right. Yeah, no weird symbolism that I see. Now the 4chan people are going to come after me on this. Did he give you that ring just before he was arrested, or?
No, actually, this was in his property when he that I collected from the prison. Yeah.
Just for the sake of catching everybody up to speed on the argument that WACKD has something to do with this, so this is the way the story goes. Once the WACKD token comes out, and of course this tweet gets people to speculate, then they notice that the addresses of the token holders match kind of 31 terabytes of info, because it has 31,721 holders of the token. And you can probably pull up the next thing here, Travis, because I think it's going to be exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, you can see, because everything on the blockchain is tracked. So there's WACKD, the token, there's the holders. And then this is also him saying, I've collected files on corruption in governments. For the first time, I'm naming names and specifics. I'll begin with a corrupt CIA agent and 2 Bahaman officials coming today. If I'm arrested or disappear, 31 plus terabytes of incriminating data will be released to the press. Yeah. So this could be like him just being dramatic and exaggerating, but
I don't think so, because he actually got a phone call about that, and they said, do not dox a CIA agent.
I wondered if that actually, is there a follow-up to this tweet or no?
There is a follow-up where he talks about that, where he was dissuaded from, but he later does release information about the Bahamian officials And so the reason was because we were chilling in the Bahamas doing what it was we were doing, and he got information that the police chief was going to have John arrested for anything, drunken disorderly or something made up, so that they could just get him into custody and then ship him back to the States. Because and they don't have income tax, and so he could not have been extradited from the Bahamas for that, what we were on the run for.
Well, I even think the claims, the charges, let's say, are a little bit suspect.
Yes.
Because, the whole famous story of Al Capone, he did all this stuff, but he got caught on tax evasion. If they're looking for you, they're going to go this route because everybody has mistakes or things on their taxes. And
John didn't, I'm sorry to interrupt, but John didn't have any of that because he wasn't filing.
Yeah, he says that, exactly. So he wasn't filing. And he also says he's living off money from the sale that happened years ago. So there's no income to claim anyway.
Right.
This is what he says. But the U.S. government didn't seem to be all that concerned with other crypto scams at the time. Jake Paul's still walking around out there podcasting. He's a major crypto scammer. So, and then he's easy to catch too, because they know where he is.
Yeah.
So it seems like this was about something else.
Definitely, I think so, because John was not shy about sharing him not paying his taxes. Like, he spoke about it often.
Yeah.
And everywhere. So if they wanted to, they could come and seize properties and belongings and anything. Anything they could have done while we were living in the States. We were living in Tennessee. It wasn't really unknown that we were in Tennessee. It's like they could have come and found us anytime.
Right. So, Travis, can you pull up Whacked Gavin? Because I find this one to be interesting. With wallet addresses, they're always kind of anonymous strings of characters. But at the time, you could actually kind of change that. So you could make it an address that is more like a website, so that if I wanted to have people donate crypto to me, I could make it higherside.eth instead of this crazy string of letters.
Right.
Well, this is an interesting one where people are looking at the token holders of this Whacked token, and one of them is this. You see underlined, it says Gavin McClelland.eth. This is what this guy did. All the other ones are random characters, but not this one. So then he tweets that this tweet just shows that he was aware of John and also the Whacked token. And then down below is this Gavin guy's Twitter. And on Twitter, it'll tell you if high profile people follow you. And right there it says, followed by Senator Ted Cruz.
Oh, that's interesting.
So why does Senator Ted Cruz follow this random crypto guy that's involved in John's token and is one of the holders of the Whacked token in particular? It's just interesting that someone of that caliber would even know about this or be concerned at all.
Very, very much so. That's very interesting.
Have you met Senator Ted Cruz?
I have not. No.
Have you met Gavin McClelland?
No, I have not.
Yeah.
But that video is really cool, the Coen Bros.
Yes.
In fact, they filmed that at our house in Tennessee. We had a lot of fun filming that. So
it's a nice little rap video, if I remember correctly. So then this just kind of fills out the story. It comes from a 4chan poster where they say, people have noticed that the Whacked token burns itself at 10% per transaction.
Yes.
I speculate this means the token itself is a timer. Once it's all burned, the other token, Aftershock, will start doing shit. Given that there are 31,000 Whacked addresses, that roughly corresponds to the alleged 31 terabytes of files, and my current working theory is that Whacked is a way of disseminating data on the blockchain while counting itself down to avoid the possibility of the blockchain being flooded with redundant data. I'd guess the Aftershock token will have some key related to it. Shortly before dying, John tweeted, Boolean XOR exploit, by which you can track data sets by running some iterative process X times X plus 1 times. Any tech-minded anons probably want to read those tweets and think about whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah.
So then it goes on, and another 4chan poster says, we calculated about 47 to 51 days until Whacked actually counts down. They say flatlines. And then Glitch and Aftershock, these other tokens that are kind of associated with the same blockchain, should wake up. Now, August 11th at this time was 48 days, so well within that window, 47 to 51 days. And August 11th was the day that FEMA and the FCC planned that nationwide emergency test. So when you say that something happened, I really think we're talking about a cat and mouse thing here with John trying to do this and then them getting wind of it and desperately trying to keep it from coming out. And this is one of those elements. And it goes on to say that there was the big blackouts for Amazon and Facebook and Google at this time. And the WACK token started pumping when the counter went down. And there was also a countdown on the website, is my understanding. I read a comment from a user who says they were there for the countdown and the site crashed. Then 15 minutes later, a new counter came up counting down to 1 hour, but it crashed again and basically just didn't do anything. So maybe it was compromised. Do you have any thoughts on what I'm laying out here? Does this make sense to you? Do you know about the details of this countdown or anything?
I don't really know the details about that, but that Belize tweet was really, really strange that John wanted me to put out. Because when he was in prison, I was the one tweeting from his account.
Yeah, the what tweet?
The Belize.
Oh, that, okay, the thing I read, Boolean XOR exploit.
Yeah, and it definitely seemed like there was a message in there that was meant to be given to whoever was reading the tweet, you know? There was like a series of weird tweets there just before he died. And so... like I said, I think something happened. It should have been released, and something happened to prevent that from happening, I believe.
That's what this data kind of suggests. This timeline suggests that. And the other big element of it is the Miami condo collapse.
Yeah.
Now, I know you hear this gets roped in.
Yeah.
First off, I wanted to throw in that the WACKD countdown apparently gave coordinates of Highland Park, Texas, 2.4 miles from Dealey Plaza. Another Texas reference.
Okay.
That is interesting.
That is very interesting.
I think I might have had that slide, but it's just some coordinates. And then let's talk about the Miami condo collapse, because this is speculated to be the location of the 31 terabyte hard drive, or the actual hard copy of it. And it mysteriously collapsed the day after John supposedly died in prison. The video of it, which I think we might be able to play, the video of this collapse definitely shows, look at the bottom here. Boom. What's that?
Yeah.
Now, is that electrical equipment and something collapsing under the weight? That looks like a controlled demolition.
Yes,
looks like
sure.
9/11 to me. This is also not a slum. Like I've read people saying that, oh, well, this is just some shitty building on the coast. It's like, no, Miami is not a cheap place to live.
No,
These condos are apparently close to $900,000 each. I don't know. That looks very suspicious to me. So you have this building that falls the day after John dies, and then Mossad is brought in. I also have a thing of that. Mossad is brought in to investigate this.
Yeah, which was always very strange.
Yeah, what's that about? It sounds like first off, it sounds like they know a little bit about blackmail material from other situations, and that maybe they were trying to make sure that it was actually compromised and neutralized. Yes, you got to remind me to say these.
Allegedly know these things.
I leave myself vulnerable here without enough allegedlys and supposedlys. Now, I'm going to let this go about John potentially being still alive, but okay, so if this was true, if there's any truth to this, you would expect the building to go down and then you kill the person because you've compromised the material. This happened the other way. So the speculation is, what if John was allowed to fake his death on the condition that he gave up the material, hence the building coming down the day after and not before?
I thought about that, but I also thought, see, John was very valuable, but he was unpredictable. He was uncontrollable. So this made him dangerous. And so, yes, the case could be made for, him being able to get out and him giving up that information. Or they just said, screw it, let's just whack him and we'll,
deal with it. Yeah.
Deal with the fallout later,
So the big question is there anything really connecting John to this building? The speculation is he owned one of these condos. Can you confirm or deny?
I don't know. I have no idea about that. I've also heard someone say something about a son of his having a condo there or living in the building or something.
One of his 47 children?
Yes. Yes. But I did find it extremely strange that they brought in Israeli excavation team to, help with, with recovery. But also someone explained to me that this was, I guess Miami is highly populated with Jewish people, and maybe there was possibly some people that were Jewish living there, and so naturally, the Jews look out for themselves. So of course they would have brought people in to help find, their people. So
yes,
allegedly.
So, I mean, that is I'm glad I wanted to fit all that into the first hour. I was trying to move really quickly because this is the stuff that is most speculated about. Right. Are there conspiracies or elements of details that you've heard that I didn't bring up that you actually think are kind of interesting that keep you up at night?
I think the main thing that bothers me is just that I wasn't able to see his body, his full body. That is what bothers me. And then also, after John, when he initially died, people were putting out videos and saying, "See, he's alive." This video, and that was really infuriating for me because they were all pre-recorded videos. None of them were so a little bit of hope would rise and then be shattered. When I saw the videos, because I am looking, I want him to not be dead.
Of course.
I want that to not have been his end because he was deserving of so much better. I love to imagine that he's somewhere on some island, with a big booty native girl feeding him grapes and him fishing and just having a good time. But I just don't believe it to be true. Again, why? Most importantly, because his hubris would not allow him to stay silent for this long. It just wouldn't.
I agree. So did you ever see any of the material that he extracted, even if it's mundane stuff that was just recorded from these computers? It seems like you were helpful in maybe getting them out there, but did you ever see material come back?
No, that was I don't want to say above my pay grade, but it was just not something that he would have shared with me, just for my own safety.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, first off, I guess I would say a lot of people probably expect you to have millions of dollars. Obviously he had some. I've heard a story of the past where you talked about a road trip where you went from Portland, or you went from Tennessee to Portland, and he would stop, and it took you 3 weeks because he would stop and he'd be gone for a few hours, and he was like getting caches that he had stored roadside for emergencies. I mean, I put that in the box of things he would do. Yeah. But he apparently could, take cash and bury it under a tree somewhere and then go dig it up at the time. Yeah. But when he passed, there's not really a lot. You don't have access to a lot of funds. No. Let's say.
No, I don't. We actually got divorced before we left the States. And so he left me things in our divorce. But obviously we continued our relationship after the divorce.
Was that a strategic divorce? Or was it
Am I allowed to say yes? I don't think I should say yes, because then what if the allegedly? There we go.
Fair. You care. You had a divorce and then you got back together.
Yes,
perhaps.
There
let's
we are.
Say. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
This is what happened.
That might be unfortunate for the inheritance type of thing. Of course, if you're in trouble for tax evasion and these sorts of crimes, I'm sure a lot of that stuff is confiscated. Any available?
I would imagine so. I don't know what happened with any of that. And also, John didn't have a will, so there was no estate. There was no divvying out of things, as far as I understand.
That's all just to say, talk to us about this crypto project that you're actually working on with this AI John. I watched a video this morning where he's talking about Epstein, and it is a AI generated John, and I don't know where the text that he's reading comes from. I'm curious where the monologue comes from. Is that generated from just an AI trained on all the available content?
Yes. And so the AI creates the content for the podcast. The AI created the artwork for the podcast and creates the artwork for the podcast. He came up with the name of it, which is really cool. And yes, it's just from John's Twitter account and interviews, keynote speeches that John has done. So we're still fine tuning the AI. It has his voice, but it just doesn't have that wild card, sort of what is this guy going to say next, ability to kind of draw you in. So we're still working on it very much, but the project is called Antivirus. It's spelled AINTI virus. It's a play on the antivirus. And you can find it at antivirus.ai. And so the project is basically just reviving all of the privacy tools that John was working on before he died. So he had other projects he was working on, and Josh Case was actually a part of the WHACKD token. He actually was the project manager on that token, as well as the project manager on the Ghost token as well that John had. And so he has taken up this antivirus project and just kind of reviving those ideas that he worked on personally with John. And so that's what we're trying to do, bring privacy back to the individual as they transact in the cryptocurrency world on the blockchain.
Right on. So what does it actually do? I mean, you're working with people who previously worked with John, because the technical expertise has to be there. Mm-hmm. And this is a token that if you hold it, it disseminates some kind of privacy within your wallet.
Yes, it is. It's a privacy token, and we also have gift cards that you can purchase with the token. You can, as a means of being able to cash out some of your crypto. We also have eSIMs, so that gives you another layer of privacy. We're working on a VPN, and we are also working on encrypted email to just add those layers of necessary privacy so that you can move your money privately, because no one should know what you're holding. Right. That should be no one's business. And so we can see with the things that are happening, why I'm excited about it, or why it's so important to me. One instance of, I think, this gentleman named Robert Moss, who was a firefighter in the UK, and he had made some unsavory comments, about his former employers. And he was arrested because of that, and so we should have some sort of privacy like that. Infringes, obviously it's the UK, and that maybe can not happen here, but you should be able to air a grievance, and it was a private communication, and so these things should not be. And so we need to bolster our privacy, and as it relates to our finances, definitely we should have better mechanisms in place to keep us from prying eyes,
I agree. Yeah, that's the speculation of what the next few years is going to be about. Trump passed the Stable Act, or the Genius Act, for the stable coins, and then there's a Clarity Act. And the speculation is that these stable coins are going to kind of be a level jump in the economy, and then they're going to disseminate crypto through social media companies like X and Facebook and all this stuff, because when it comes to people out in the world, in the third world, second world, they have these apps. So if you can hold American money in them, that's a value to someone in Central America or all over the place. And then, these social media companies can take it away based on what you say, again, on the same platform. Mm-hmm. So if your social media is also your bank, and this is the way you express yourself, you now have to be careful what you say, because if you are too vested in this economy, then they can pull it.
Yeah, exactly. But this is why the need for decentralized exchanges as well. But I think we're kind of really dropping the ball, the crypto industry as a whole, because they will come in and usurp it. This is what they're trying to figure out now. And so what was meant to free us will now just greatly imprison us even more, because we're not coming together as a community, because there's enough on the table for all of us to have our bags moon, you know what I'm saying, and buy Lambos and all of that crazy stuff that we want to do, right? But I think for the most part, we all just want to live a free and unencumbered life, right? I just want to be free to do what I want to do with my life, and that should be not a problem with anyone. And I think, if anything, the situation with COVID should scare us and make us aware of what is able to happen now that a precedent has been set, right? And so when you do say something that they don't like, we even see with the Canadian truckers who had their bank accounts frozen, right? That's scary. We don't want that happening to us. So we need these decentralized exchanges. We need privacy coins like Monero. We need privacy tools that allow us to have sort of cloaking device, if you will,
Sure.
of our finances. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned COVID. That was another thing that John tweeted about that he
Yeah.
was way ahead of. And he said, under no circumstances should you take that
Mm-hmm.
vaccine. And that was February of 2020,
Yeah.
very early. And I went and so there's a lot of tweets and things that are attributed to him that maybe he didn't say. Everything that I brought up today and showed on the screen, I went and found
Yeah.
on the actual timeline
Mm-hmm.
that is still there.
Yep.
So that was interesting. And apparently he follows me. That was you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I mean, Joe Rogan's followed me for years, and I don't know, maybe it's his wife too.
Okay.
But
Cool. Very cool.
well, before we call it in,
Okay.
what can people do to help maybe? Is there any other big call to action you'd like to leave people with?
No, just keep digging. Keep questioning everything, right? And follow the money. When you follow the money, you will find whatever it is that you're searching for.
And by follow the money, you mean follow the WHACKD token.
That too. Yeah, that too as well. But honestly, yeah, just keep digging, because I'm just one person, and the only thing that I can do is share my experience, share what I know, again, while making sure I don't share something that will put me in any danger. But I've shared quite a lot here today.
Now, I'm not asking you what it is, but do you feel like you have things that you won't share that would put your life in danger? A fair amount of things.
Maybe exact specifics about our time in Spain. Yeah, I think that's something that I try to skirt around. But I will, in saying that, I will say that there's clues there. Everything's on John's Twitter account, right? I'm sorry, X.
Yes.
Everything's there. Everything's
on.
there. There's breadcrumbs to be followed. So
Okay, we'll get out there. Awesome. Well, thank you for being so candid and for sharing this stuff. I know it's difficult. Like, you did have a real relationship. This is someone you care about, so it can probably get raw at times. And the internet, doesn't hold back. And so I tried to bring up a lot of the things that are the speculations out there and inquiring minds want to know. So thanks for doing it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. This was awesome. An awesome chat.
Right on. And boom goes the dynamite. How about that, people? Not a bad choice for the inaugural first in-person interview in THC's long 15-year history, right? Close to what, like 1,000 episodes maybe, and we finally get an in-person guest, and that alone can be a bit of an adjustment already. And then to have it be something so personal, which is also kind of rare around here, adds another layer. And I feel a bit bad going so hard on the John is still alive threads, but I told myself that the goal is to address as much of the rumors and speculation as we can. Whether she knows anything about a thing or not, I just want the internet to know I asked. And she's heard it all before. She has made up her own mind about the prospect of John faking his own death, and she's comfortable with her conclusion. I never want to give a person false hope when they lose a loved one, but there are reasons to wonder. I mean, first off, the old girlfriend straight up saying that he contacted her from Texas, the very state where the countdown coordinates pointed to. And in the Reddit thread, there were kind of jokes about going there with a shovel, yet never any true follow up. I'd like to know if there's any more to that story. But then we have the Bitcoin Magazine article. Yeah, that might just be for clicks. But if he were alive, being a Bitcoin maxi and considering his previous locales, El Salvador is sort of convincing. Also, all the stuff with his body, them being so careful about how it was shown to Janice and then holding off for a year and then giving her cremated remains. Hey, maybe that is just what it is, but it's not exactly typical protocol and definitely not confirmation of death. Anyway, then there's all the Epstein parallels. And I'm convinced Epstein is still alive, actually, due to the Rusty Shackleford, I think, drone shot on the island where someone who looks just like Epstein is looking up at the drone with a sort of, well, I don't like that expression on their face. And then there's the ear analysis. You always got to look at the ears. And they're quite different when it comes to the dead body and other photos of Epstein that you can find. Every situation is different. Who knows? And I understand Janice's point about John's ego. But maybe he feels like after getting caught again, there's really no place left to go with all the baggage of his true identity. Hard to say, but if we don't see something on his 80th birthday here in September, then we probably won't. If there ever was going to be a reveal, that's a great time for it, right? But I did enjoy hanging out with Janice. I can't believe I got to actually hold the ring that he was wearing when he was arrested. That's kind of fun, especially since it is part of the curiosity or skepticism that there might be something being signaled. Didn't have any weird logos on it or any symbolism on it as far as I could tell. But Janice is super genuine. All of the conversation before and after the interview was great. She really couldn't have come across as a nicer person or more sincere. I even asked her if she wanted to smoke a joint in the parking lot, and she said no because she's trying to remain on the sober train now, which I understand. If you've seen Running with the Devil, I get why she might make that decision for herself. But I also asked before we got started, as a host, I always ask about promo stuff, especially if it's as complicated as the anti crypto project that she seems to be working on with the AI John Thane. And I was like, what do I need to know about that? She said, well, it's fine. I don't even really care if we get into that. I just want people to keep asking questions about this story and hear the truth and get to more truth. So I thought that was great too and worth pointing out. And yes, I also just don't want to distract away from the core issue. And the core issue is that this is not a suicide like the official story says. Whether he is alive or not, that's a side issue. The core issue is that they've lied to us about the narrative, it seems, because I don't know how a person